Welcome back to Pirates of Savannah Audio Book, Chapter 24. We are almost there. If you haven't gone over to lupolilink.com, you should. Right now, you should. Enjoy the rest of the book.
Chapter 24. Hunting Pirates. Heather went through her mother's belongings and was taken back when she opened a leather bag containing Archibald's books. She pulled out Locke's tome and surveyed it. The cover was splattered with her father's dried blood, and the book was worn. She carried the bag to April and showed her. "Do you think the crew would enjoy being read these books?" April smiled and replied, "That is a dandy of an idea. I'd be honored to hold them for you until you want them back. I think my father would be so happy to know that so many ears will hear the message in his illegal books he died for," Heather replied. She pulled the books out of the bag and noticed something was wadded up on the bottom. She dug around and pulled out a group of yellow and black strips of fabric. "Oh, look here. It's Father's armbands for his meetings," she said as she pressed them to her face. Her eyes suddenly brightened when she announced, "I'm keeping these. I have an idea for them." A few days passed, and at night the Robin and the Vendetta would be lashed together. April would pick a chapter in one of the books and read it loudly so both crews could hear. Mingo and Rose translated so even the African crews could enjoy and discuss the ideas of liberty. Much like a meeting of the Freemen's Society, a passage would be read and it would be opened up for discussion. Heated debate and ideological arguing could be heard most nights. The crew loved the new tradition. One night, Heather finally revealed her surprise project that she had been working on. "Admiral, I present this to you to remind people to enlighten themselves. I made this with the set of Father's collection of armbands he used in his meetings." April unfolded the cloth, and it revealed black and yellow colors set at a diagonal. She saw the garments and figured this must be a flag. "I thought that Archibald's Vendetta needed its own proper jack," Heather said as she smiled. "Ah, I love it," April said softly, placing a reassuring hand on Heather's shoulder. "Let's raise this in proper ceremony tonight," she commanded. Miss Darden ran up and interrupted them. "Admiral, your cat is having kittens. I've counted 4 black ones in total." "Ah, very good, lass. This should counter any bad luck from having a baby born at sea on our barkie. A black baby kitten should balance a newborn." Sam Scurvy cut in. "You know, I've been sailing me whole life and never heard of these traditions. I thinks you make some of these up." The Admiral snapped back. "You must have sailed in different waters then, or you'd know how rituals be done proper." 1 year had passed at sea, and the crew's numbers grew. When the fleet dropped off William, they increased their ranks with some disgruntled Scots. They managed to find like-minded individuals everywhere. Every smuggling run, they would pick up new sailors. Profits had been exceptional, and the crew was happy. Miss Darden had expanded her floating brothel idea and recruited new prostitutes. So, of course, April recruited many more black cats. A healthy profit was being made due to her clever ideas of new ways to whore. April also used the same ruse Patrick had created to liberate 3 other slave ships. She knew she could not keep using it because the word of her little fleet of outcasts was spreading quickly. The free slaves bolstered her numbers, and the ships were finally at respectable numbers. April started spending large amounts of time training Nina and Audrey in the ways of commanding a ship. One thing the Admiral was very strict about was drilling. Many months of intense drilling took place during that time period. The gunners could fire the cannons, reload, and fire again in just over a minute. Some of the ex-slaves became excellent shots with long muskets. Many of the Africans fashioned traditional spears and clubs and were deadly proficient with them. April trained the officers in the art of blade play. Each was given a cutlass and was expected to practice daily. In just a few months of hard work, Sam and Patrick had become decent swordsmen. All things were going very well, until a rum running to Savannah. During one of the Robin's late-night deliveries to the secret pirate tunnels, The admiral was delivered a message. The messenger told her Byron Kingsley had been chasing them for a year, and that he finally convinced the board of trustees to take a British man-of-war to hunt the fleet down. Although he was only hunting the Vendetta, as he did not know about the Robin. He saw the Vendetta fleeing in Cape Fear and had his sights on her ever since. April called a meeting with her officers that night to discuss the situation. "What are our options, gentlemen? We are making a fortune staying local and smuggling, but the risk is great. We could move our operation to South America, but it won't be nearly as profitable. I'm looking for ideas." Sam Scurvy spoke up. "I vote for running. Even with both our vessels at full guns, we'd need a miracle to take a man-of-war." "What do you think, my quartermaster?" April questioned Patrick. "Of course," he replied. "I want to stay and get a chance to kill Kingsley for what he had done. But that is my heart talking and not my brain. I'd not put the lives of my friends and neighbors at stake just for my lust for revenge." Isaac injected. "I agree. Kingsley is an evil man who the world would thank us to rid them of. But I have to throw my vote in with Sam. We should run." The consensus around the table was to remain safe over profit. For the first time ever, people had experienced freedom, and they had already gotten hooked on their new life. They would do anything to remain this free. "Experience tells me we better at least have a backup plan. My wolf, you will be in charge of our strategy in case we have no choice. It is decided. We'll make one last run to Cape Fear, and then we'll sail to South America for a little time," April stated with authority. The crew unloaded the crates of illegal muskets to the purchasing parties at Cape Fear. They took their payments and explained it would be a while before they could deliver more guns. They cast off and headed down the coastline at full sail. A fishing vessel intercepted them and delivered a message. Kingsley knew their location, and they were told they had better prepare. The admiral knew that she could not just take to open sea because eventually Kingsley's ship would overtake them. She thought, "We're going to have to fight him eventually. We should fight him on our terms." "So this is where we make our stand. This cove has a lot of great hiding places, but it is a dead end. There's no way out if your plan does not work," April said nervously, thinking aloud. "They call this place Long Bay. A few families own this land, but most people call it Myrtle Swash because of all those southern wax myrtles. A couple of us pirates used to call it Myrtle Beach. Almost nobody's out here. Should be remote enough for what we need to do. Plus, it has a sandbar over there for what you need to do." "Everyone is in position, and if this goes right, none of us will have to fire one cannon," Patrick replied. Isaac interrupted. "Admiral, man-of-war approaching. You want me to send out the jolly boat in terms to meet them?" April's breast heaved as she breathed in deep. "Aye," she commanded. Sam nervously rowed the small boat out toward the man-of-war. As he got closer, he ran up a white flag and waited off its starboard side. "I seek audience with Commander Byron Kingsley," he yelled. The soldiers on their deck kept their muskets trained on him while they mustered Kingsley. An officer claiming to be Byron Kingsley shouted down to Sam. Patrick watched nervously as Sam rowed back to the Vendetta. The bow-legged sailor climbed some netting laid down on the side of the ship and made his way to Patrick. "You were right. He's an arrogant piece of shit and took your challenge. He accepted the duel, and his terms are single combat without seconds. He chose a traditional night duel, with blade and lantern. You will meet on the sandbar an hour after sunset. If you win, the Vendetta is free to go. If you lose, we surrender the Vendetta." Sam concluded grimly. "And Patrick, there'll be no quarter given." "I am grateful for the duel, but I'm not happy he chose sword and lantern. I'm not as good of a swordsman as I want to be," Patrick murmured. April hugged her husband and comforted him. "Be brave. Remember what I told you. Sword fighting is mainly about stamina. Whoever gets tired first dies." She ran her hand across his groin and reminded him, "Now I know you have excellent stamina, my wolf." The crew rallied around as April gave him some last-minute tips in fighting in the sand and how to use a lantern for defense and attack. After drilling, Patrick wanted to be alone in his quarters to get focused. April sat as she watched her husband shave off his beard. As he carefully guided the large hunting knife across his battle-worn face, he spoke. "I only grow this beard because my face makes most people uncomfortable. The scars used to really annoy me, but now that I'm older, I've learned to just accept who I am. This face is part of me, and I need to be comfortable with my own skin. I'm tired of hiding my face because of other people's feelings. Fuck them. If I'm going to die tonight, I will die how I want to look." Patrick reflected. "Well, it is smart to shave it off before battle. The Romans used to do the same thing so their enemies could not grab it in a fight. You look so nervous, husband. Come lay down with me in this bed, and I will relax you." She climbed on top of him and gave her husband a proper send-off. As the sun set, Isaac distracted himself by watching two small fishing vessels off in the distance. He was worried about his best friend, as was the rest of the crew. His life now depended on Patrick's mediocre swordsman skills against a lifetime soldier. The new quartermaster emerged from the captain's quarters, slowly savoring every step. There was a good chance this was the last hour of his life, and he was trying desperately to slow it down. His friends encircled him and hugged him. They all knew he was taking an enormous risk to keep his crewmates safe. "This be one of the finest cutlasses ever made. I have taken 8 souls with this blade, and it has absorbed their powers. You will fight with the strength of 8 men, and it will protect you," April said before she kissed him on the cheek and handed over her blade. The cutlass was a shorter blade, thick and curved. It had many notches in the edge from striking blades and bones. The hilt had an ornate sword guard shaped like an octopus, as tentacles came down and wrapped around a large ruby-encrusted pommel. Etched in the blade was a picture of April's black cat to add to the luck of the sword. The cutlass seemed more a work of art than a weapon. "I have added extra wick and oil to this lamp, so it should give you the advantage of more light. Just remember to watch your footwork, and you'll do great, old friend." Isaac smiled and handed Patrick the lantern. It was time. Patrick said goodbye once more and climbed down to the jolly boat. The crew watched in anticipation as the lantern on the boat grew dimmer and dimmer as it got further away. Patrick's mind was racing with what-ifs as he slowly rowed to the sandbar. What if Kingsley thrust high right? What is a correct response if he parries down left? He knew he had to settle his mind and focus as he approached. True to his word, Byron was already on the sandbar waiting. "Aw, you took your time coming to your own funeral, boy. You're a troublesome cuss. I've been trying to catch up with you for some time now," Byron yelled to Patrick. Patrick, cautiously and slowly, stepped on the damp sandbar. He tested his footing in the wet sand. His bare foot stuck. This was a promising thought. It should even the odds in Patrick's favor if Kingsley could not be quick with his footwork. Courage filled the amateur swordman as he stepped closer. "You're a blight on this world, Kingsley. I hope Archibald can piss on you from heaven while you get raped by the devil's dogs," he baited. Kingsley answered his insult by stepping closer into the light of the lanterns. He was wearing his standard-issue red coat made by the famous South Carolina Independent Company. He chose to fight with his military hanger. It was a long, thick, straight hunting sword with a double-edged blade and a simple hilt, a very popular style blade in Savannah. As the men approached each other, both ships exploded with cheering. Although tough to make out the details in the darkness, the crews could clearly see the duelers' silhouettes in the moon and lantern light. Byron gave no more warning and ran at Patrick. The new quartermaster planted his feet and braced for the blow. The sounds of steel clashing rang out over the waters to thunderous cheering. It was already hard to see, and Byron was swinging his lamp at Patrick's head, wrecking his night vision. The pirate focused hard to keep track of the blade in the darkness. The inexperienced swordsman knew he made a mistake the moment he got off his footwork. Kingsley feinted to the left, and Patrick parried too hard. This shifted his weight and presented his right side exposed. The soldier took advantage of this rookie mistake by slicing him across the ribs. Patrick's side burned with pain, but he refused to let it distract him. The pain woke him up and reminded him to stick to April's training. It was then he decided to stop fighting like a gentleman and fight like a pirate. He changed his style to that of a good bare-knuckled swordsman and pushed in tight. The pirate locked blades with the redcoat and swung his sword guard into the soldier's teeth. A spray of blood erupted to thunderous cheers. Byron focused his anger and returned at Patrick with a mad flurry of skilled strikes. The rookie answered the fast blows with parries until the last slash broke the tip off his cutlass. A shard of broken blade pierced his right eye. Patrick recoiled in pain and swung wildly, backing up. Kingsley was amused by this and taunted his crippled foe. He attacked the blindside thigh, dropping Patrick to a knee with a scream of pain. The pirate dragged himself backwards as Byron nicked his right arm and laughed. The arrogant soldier stopped to admire his work, enjoying the sight of blood rolling out of Patrick's eye, leg, chest, and arm. "I want to drag this out more, boy, but my men are anxious to hang your crew. To your credit, you did last longer than Archibald, so good show. We're going to have a good time poking your captain before we..." "Ah!" Byron screamed. Just as Prudence predicted when Patrick first met her. Indeed, that red coat uniform did go up just like a Viking funeral pyre. While the redcoat was saying his piece, Patrick took the opportunity to throw his lamp into the babbling man's groin. Kingsley ran for the water as Patrick reached out with his broken cutlass and sliced through the commander's Achilles tendon. Archibald's murderer immediately fell and continued crawling for the water. The pirate crawled after him and sliced the burning man across the ass. Byron rolled into the water, dousing the flames, as his dueling partner continued to crawl after him. Patrick made no speech, nor said no clever curse before extinguishing the soldier's life. He brutally skull-bashed Kingsley with the ruby-encrusted pommel. The pommel fell multiple times to the cheers of the Vendetta's crew until Byron's face was no longer recognizable as human. The exhausted Patrick sliced the throat of the corpse to ensure he was dead. A faint cracking sound could be heard, and the victorious man noticed the sand exploding next to his leg. Another muzzle shot rang out from the man-o'-war and splashed into the water. The woozy Patrick slid into the water and dove under as more shots rained down on his position. "Lying bastards! Bring us in! Man the cannons!" She turned to Audrey Scott. "You're the only one strong enough at swimming to save me husband. Take some bandages and go save him, please." "I am not a surgeon, but I'll do what I can." She's grabbed the small medical pouch and dove off the Vendetta. "Nina, when I let go and board, I need you to hold this helm straight. Do you understand?" Nina barked back, "Aye, Admiral." The Vendetta had never anchored and was now dropping its sails. The crew knew they had to get very close or the cannonballs would never punch through the tough hull of the man-o'-war. Both crews scrambled to their stations. "Can you get a clear shot at their bow? It's our only hope to stop this ship." April questioned Sam. "It's gotta be close, Admiral. It depends how drilled their crew be." Sam shouted back as he frantically helped April steer the Vendetta into proper position. "We're only going to have one shot at this. Let us wait," she shouted calmly. 3 cannons on the man-o'-war fired. 2 shots overshot the deck, ripping through some sails, while 1 shot struck a jolly boat tied to the side of the ship, blowing it to shivers. "Finally, the cannons are in line. Fire!" the Admiral screamed. The order was repeated across the deck. Shock waves cracked through the air as large gray puffs of smoke filled the space between the vessels. When the smoke cleared, the bow was smashed in some, but it was still holding. "Damn, she's a strong barkie. Reload," April barked. The Vendetta's long musketmen were perched in the riggings. They started taking long shots at the British deck officers and struck 2 down. The man-of-war's retaliation was terrible. Multiple cannons tore through the Vendetta. The main mast was keeling and pulling the ship over. Multiple holes were blown in the side of the smaller vessel, and a few of the Vendetta's snipers in the tops fell to their death. The British had no intention of capturing this ship. They were firing to sink it. Damn! If we don't punch a hole in that bow, it won't take them much time to outmaneuver us. Where's everybody else? April wondered aloud. Nobody had paid any attention to the 2 inconspicuous small fishing ketches that had sailed into position. They unveiled their cannons, which were hidden under piles of nets. The Vendetta softened up her bow, lads. Let's see if we can punch through, Captain K.T. Brewer shouted. Oui, vive liberté, Captain Robert Doe shouted. The Black Hound and the Mary Read fired their 4 cannons together. The sight of the shivers and planks of wood filled the air as the crew of the tiny vessels celebrated. They had finally punched a small hole in the bow of the British ship. Fire! Was repeated on the deck of the Vendetta as the cannons focused their firepower on the exposed hole. Shouts of terror came from the belly of the British vessel as a section of gunners were blown apart. In all the excitement, the man-of-war was too busy to notice another vessel approaching from her backside. The Robin had quietly hid behind a small island in the cove, waiting to make her move in the dark. They easily approached in stealth because of the confusion of night battle. Seamus shouted, "Clear the decks with the grape-shot, lasses!" Heather, Mariana, and Prudence worked together, aiming the small deck cannons of the Robin. The twins and the girls' families all manned the other cannons in teams. The group lit the war irons simultaneously. To the soldiers' surprise and confusion, many of the redcoats on the decks were cut down by the brutal shower of shot. April nodded at Sam as he swung the wheel hard. The Vendetta's stern drifted quickly next to the enemy vessel. The fast movement caused the Vendetta's teetering mast to crash down upon the British ship's deck, crushing 2 of its crew to death. The Admiral pulled out Mary Read's Swedish boarding-axe pistol and screamed, "Boarding parties!" Grappling hooks flew in from all directions as the 4 vessels lashed onto the man-of-war. Cannon fire rocked the Vendetta at such close range, and her crew screamed. She had many holes, but none were yet low enough to have her take on water. Isaac led the charge from the Vendetta with a blunderbuss in each of his hands. He fired both guns down the gangplank they had dropped, clearing out a group of 5 unsuspecting British soldiers. He then picked up a spent musket and stuck his plug bayonet in the end of the gun. The dagger had a tapered end and slid into the barrel with a tight fit to make a lethal spear. He stabbed at any fallen English soldier posing a threat, clearing a space on the deck for others to follow. The bayonet quickly got stuck in a redcoat's ribcage. The hulking man switched over to the boarding tomahawk the injured Indian gave him, and he continued whirling around the crowded deck, dropping bodies. The rest of the British crew were too busy to notice that Seamus and the group of whores were boarding from the Robin as well. Miss Darden used a linstock to light the fuse of her cast-iron ball packed with gunpowder and shot. The whoremaster rolled the grenade down the stairs to the lower decks. Shouts of pain were heard below deck as it exploded. The other whores followed suit and dropped their grenades in any hatch they could find. As Margie dropped her grenade down a hatch, Redcoat hit her across the head with his musket butt. He lifted his firelock over his head to deliver the death blow when his chest exploded with red. The dizzy woman looked up to see the man whose lives she had spared just return the favor, shooting her assailant before he could deliver the final blow to her head. In an intoxicated stupor, Seamus threw a grenade onto a closed hatch. By the time he realized his drunken mistake, it was too late and the bomb went off. He looked down to find out why his foot would not move, and he noticed it was no longer there. He fell over in shock. An angry redcoat officer swung his sword at Teresa's head. She barely ducked the blow and fell to the ground. When she looked back up, she saw the soldier stumbling backwards with 2 arrow shafts sticking out of his chest. Amos and his twin both made unbelievable shots with their hunting bows from the Robin. African warriors had already run across the downed mast of the Vendetta and were swarming the decks in droves. The English shot a few of their muskets, but were poorly matched against their melee fighting skills. Very few foes could withstand their up-close spear fighting. Even with such a crowded deck, the warriors were able to skewer the redcoats with great agility. April and Sam stormed aboard with the ex-slaves and headed below deck. Sam had a string of 4 pistols tied around his neck and would rotate them as he fired. He covered April's backside while she charged down the stairs. The Admiral cleared the hall with a vicious spray of shot from her axe pistol. An unfortunate soldier turned the corner, and the lady pirate buried the spike of the axe pistol into his chest. The vicious metal point went so deep that she could not recover the weapon. The swordswoman changed over to cutlass and main gouge. April killed many men in the past with this two-handed style. The main gouge was perfect for tight quarters below deck because it was a short, thin, left-handed stabbing blade with a large hilt and a handguard. She quickly found herself ambushed by 2 attackers, which would mean a quick death to most. April knew that very few swordsmen practiced attacking in pairs, and that she could turn their inexperience against them. The Admiral knew with some basic maneuvering she could get them to get in each other's way and open up an easy opportunity. Her opponents found themselves hitting each other with parries and knocking each other off balance. The 2 men stepped on each other's feet, knocking them both off kilter. With a double thrust with both hands, the 2 men simultaneously fell in pain, and she quickly cut them down. Back on the Mary Read, Mr. Michael and Mr. James loaded their slings. "For Lord's sake, be careful not to drop those on our ship, monsieurs," Captain Doe pleaded. The men loaded the glass pots filled with rancid meat, shit, and oil in their slings. They lit them and brought the slings to full speed. They let the stink pots fly into the hull of the bow and cheered. When the glass bottles exploded, the stinky smoke was so horrid and foul, sounds of retchings could immediately be heard. A group of 6 bloodied redcoats stumbled out of the hole in the bow, coughing and moaning. The sight of the men slowly stumbling and moaning caused such fear in Captain K.T. Brewer that he forgot where he was and even what year he was in. The peg-leg captain fired his pistol at them from the Black Hound and yelled, "You're walking dead. You'll never eat me soul. Arr!" The confused British sailors threw up their hands and dropped their muskets when they saw they were staring down the barrel of a cannon. "Mr. Michael, I don't believe what I'm seeing, do you?" Mr. James asked in a stunned tone. "We must be the luckiest men in the seas today. Look at the stinky fish we caught," Mr. James exclaimed. A Greek man coughed, and then the color ran out of his face when he realized who he had just surrendered to. "Remember us, Mr. Mandrick? Because we remember you every day we dress. We both still have to look at each other's scars and think of you and Gibbons key-hauling us," Mr. Michael grimly reminded him. "That was Gibbons' order. I did not want to do it. You forget I said we should beat the man-love out of you, not key-haul you." Mandrick coughed out. Mr. Michael continued. "Ah, yes, Captain Gibbons. We caught up with him about a year ago in Savannah and showed him how much we appreciated his discipline." The 2 men giggled evilly. Mr. James barked, "You shouldn't have followed that order. Now, we're going to have to teach you something about man-love and beatings. Take him below deck." As soon as the African warriors stormed the lower decks, the English surrendered in droves. Within 10 minutes, all the prisoners sat topside with their hands on their heads. The smoke started to lift off the deck, and the Admiral surveyed her bloody crew and wondered if her husband was still alive. The gray-haired Admiral looked back at her ships at the docks and smiled when she saw the tattered yellow and black jack blowing in the wind over the Vendetta. Nina put her hand on her aunt's shoulder and reassured her, "Relax. Captain Audrey Scott will keep our little fleet safe while we are gone." Patrick lost his balance on the cobblestone roads as they made their way to the bar. It's been over 10 years, and I am still not used to seeing out of only one bloody eye. Tracy grabbed his hand and smiled. I will help you, Daddy. He reached down and held the blue-haired girl's little hand. I know it's been a long time, but do you think it's safe to be back in Savannah? People might recognize us, the scarred-up man with the eye patch asked. Relax. Ever since Oglethorpe got promoted to Brigadier General, he returned to England. Nobody cares. People hated Kingsley, and with him gone, our shenanigans became a low priority. They've forgotten us by now. Trust us. Captain Nina Reed smiled. Patrick was completely surprised how much Savannah had grown over the last decade. Ships from all over the world used stones to balance their ballast, which they would dump at the port of Savannah when they picked up cargo. The city came up with a solution to use the growing number of ballast rocks in their ports. They used the piles and made cobblestone roads around town. Patrick saw huge churches, multi-level tabby buildings, and brick buildings. He even saw a brick factory in full swing down by the bluff. No doubt about it, Savannah was really jumping now. The couple, their daughter, and Nina made their way to where the trustees' garden used to be. A large inn now sat up over the entrance to the secret pirate tunnels and had a reputation for shady customers. The inn was built adjoining the gardener's house from the defunct trustees' garden. You're going to love this inn, husband. They already nicknamed it the Pirate House because of all the undesirables it brings in like us. They should at least have a drink named after me, she chuckled. They entered the inn and a wench yelled, We're all booked and out of rooms. Go somewhere else. We're meeting friends here for drinks, Patrick informed the wench. Well, you can watch the equinox harvest moon come up tonight out back. Should be a good crowd tonight, if I can get these deadbeats to buy anything. Follow me out back. Your party's waiting for you, Admiral Reed. The cantankerous wench barked. Patrick shot his wife a look. So much for this town forgetting about us. As they walked outside, cheers erupted from the large table. So many of their old friends were present. Tracy ran over to the large Jewish man and flung her arms around him. I missed you, Uncle. The man was a little slower, but still very strong. He held Tracy off the ground with just one hand. She giggled and tried to escape from his grip. When are you going to tell me why you're missing a finger, Uncle?
When you tell me why you keep dyeing your hair strange colors,
he snapped back. Patrick hugged his old friend and said, She keeps getting into the indigo when we're not looking. She's very headstrong and independent. Isaac laughed and dropped a little indigo-haired girl. Where's your wife, children, and Archibald, Uncle? Tracy inquired.
Archibald is over there playing with our son Tobias, and I think my wife is gossiping with those 3 old maids.
He smirked. Tracy ran over to the boys to show off her new hair. How's Garland taking to the whole traditional Jewish lifestyle and having to go to temple and such? Patrick smiled.
She studies hard, but it annoys her we study separated now. Men and women should be separated for worship, but we cannot really do that well on the ship. Now that we've had some time in a proper Jewish community, she is not adapting very well. She never believed in our religion, but she enjoyed reading our stories for entertainment. She kept asking difficult questions, and the rabbi asked us never to come back. I think she'll be much happier on the ship. It's been a lonely 2 years without you.
Isaac hugged him again.
So what have you been doing since I last saw you?
His best friend replied. During some of our long voyages, I decided to write a book about our adventures. Patrick pulled out a journal from his vest. Look, I even have drawings of all of us in it. Here's my drawing of you on the auction block. See? Isaac smiled and was touched to see his lifelong companion attempt to draw him. The twins were barely recognizable as full-grown men. Patrick shouted, Max! Amos! And gave them a friendly wave. They returned the wave, but were much too interested in talking to William's beautiful daughters, Lauren and Lindsay. William approached with his wife, Debbie. I brought you some of the finest steaks you ever had, lad. They're from my prize cattle. I'm going to get that wench to cook them up if I don't choke the life out of her first. Hugs were exchanged, and Patrick said, You look good, William. I can't believe Archibald's kilt still fits you. I meant to tell you, I ran into that crazy old Indian scout a few weeks back. Lagochi has himself a good bit of land, a young wife, and a few children. Can you believe that dog is still alive, too? He said she's had many puppies. Let's sit down over there with your old crew and drink. A loud whistle went out from William, and the crew gathered around the table. Well, monkey hump me. You're still alive, Seamus? Patrick laughed. Seamus looked very aged. He was completely bald, toothless, and had a wooden right leg. He was gaunt, with yellow eyes, and had a huge bloated liver, which looked like a large bulge under his shirt. He had adorned his hands full of rings, and had a parrot sitting on his shoulder. Patrick pointed to the colorful bird. I see you finally got married, too. That's not true, you goat humper. I have a different wife every night now. He laughed, and he slapped Teresa on the ass as she walked by. Sam interrupted and kissed Miss Darden. Thanks to this lovely lady, our floating whorehouse has been a smashing success. She's a damn whoremaster genius. She might as well take sailors, turn them upside down, and shake the silver out of their pockets. How was South America, lad? I heard it is all savages and heathens down there, Seamus inquired. The man wearing an eye patch responded. People tend to leave you alone when you got a ship as big as the Vendetta, and a man of war doesn't hurt either. We made a fortune trading exotic goods all over the world, including bananas, my new favorite fruit. The merchant life is not too bad. By the way, Seamus, I love your parrot. What'd you name him? Well, you can't understand a thing he be saying, and he got a grouchy attitude. So I named him Mr. Mandrake.
Arr, that's a good one. Arr.
The men burst into a hearty laugh. The bar wench interrupted.
As one of your cheap patrons, Patrick Willis, I got a note here for you. Things been here so long I almost forgot.
A note for me? Who from?
Jack O'Lantern. How the fuck should I know? Here, take it. And I expect a bloody good tip for that.
The tavern wench barked. The scarred-faced man tore open the wax seal and read the note. An extremely puzzled look came across his face. Well, my wolf, are you going to tell us what it says? April questioned. Patrick shook his head. All it says is, I'll be seeing you soon. Jessup. Seamus belted out. Fuck! I forgot all about that guy. I thought he got killed by a pissed-off whale. Isaac spoke out.
That mysterious bastard has not talked to us in over a decade, and that is all he says in the letter? I think I hate that guy.
I'm sure in time this note will make sense. I'm not going to worry about it tonight when I'm in such great company, Patrick dismissed. April interrupted. I'm glad we all agreed to have a reunion when we have issues to discuss. But before we get down to business, let us make a toast. Even though it is 1756, let us never forget the 28 souls we lost that day my husband struck down that bastard. Those men and women barely experienced freedom and gave their lives for it.
Huzzah!
Huzzah! Huzzah! The group drank their rum.
Everyone keep an eye on each other. Don't trust what you drink here. The Pirate's House has a devious reputation for drugging its patrons and selling them to ships. They drag the bodies into the rum cellar and out the smuggling tunnels. They sell the poor souls to be pressed into service for ships going as far across the world as Shanghai. I don't trust that shady serving wench, Sam warned.
April interrupted again. Very good. Mind your rum, boys. I have returned because I have heard there's a change in the wind. The ideas of liberty and personal freedom have made their way into the culture of the Low Country. Something big is brewing, and I can feel it stir. Tell me what you know and what be your plans. William spoke up. You are not imagining the wind of change. Our message is sunk deep. It's growing roots, and I see it blossoming everywhere. We are hearing rumors from our Scottish kinfolk up north. They're talking about going over the mountains and living their lives just out of reach of the king. It's a harsh, difficult journey, which keeps them just outside of British control. They are speaking of setting up in a land called Watauga in Tennessee and setting up a free society independent of any oppressive government rule. Our family is planning on going. All three of Archibald's moms want to go, and the twins want to come too. Seamus interrupted. Well, since I blew through the 600 shillings I got for me leg in one night, I guess I'll keep fucking running whores. Oh, and we'll be running gambling too. But don't be worrying. We will remember to think of you fucks while we live it up. Sam cut in.
You shouldn't have got a damn round of silver from that ship's fund. You blew your own fucking leg off, you drunk.
He turned to Patrick and April and continued.
We also have plans besides hoarding and gambling, Seamus. I know that we have had many debates about if a violent revolution is the only way to rid us of a king and his government. Seamus and I feel there's no other way. Even if we wanted to be peaceful, the English will not let us be. Force is all they understand, and unfortunately the only real way will ever be free. Other secret liberty societies are developing all over the country. We have heard of one called the Sons of Liberty, and we want to locate them. When the fight for this country finally happens, the colonists will need a navy. We want to organize and build a fleet to rise up against the British someday.
Isaac spoke his part.
Your sister and our family have decided to stay with you, Patrick and April. Whatever you decide, we will follow.
Patrick chimed in. We'd love it if your family joined us, old friend. Friends, those are all fine ideas. We may all be on different paths towards liberty, but hopefully we'll meet up at the same destination. We wish you all luck, and we'll be here if you ever need us. As far as our family, we're going back to sea to continue living freely, doing as we please when we please. We'll be easy enough to find if you ever need us. Just leave a message at any major port, and it'll find us. We plan on staying on the coast a little longer to scout new opportunities to make some gold. April and I have heard rumors of a French and Indian conflict starting. I bet there's some color to be made in that mess somewhere. Patrick lifted his mug. Like my wife said, liberty is heavy in the air these days, and I want to take a moment to breathe deep. I'm not sure what our future holds for us. As for me, I'm just going to have a good drink and enjoy living free tonight.